So Mr. Mohar Chakrabarty is currently working as a product owner of a B2B digital platform in Canon. And he has completed his Bachelor in Technology from West Bengal University of Technology in 2005, and he is Master's in Information Systems Management from Carnegie Mellon University in 2012. He is also pursuing his second Master's, this time in Integrated Marketing. He's also having over 10 years of full-time experience in variety of roles. He has few industry recognized certifications such as Pragmatic Marketing Certified, Certified Scrum Product Owner, Certified Scrum Master, and Information Technology Infrastructure Library. Some of his previous roles include Tech Entrepreneur, Product Manager in IBM, and Application Manager for Citigroup Applications. We welcome you, Mr. Mohar Chakrabarty.
Okay, yeah, thank you for all your help.
All right, so the stage is all yours, Mr. Chakrabarty.
Morning, good evening, good afternoon to all of you. My topic is going to be relationship of digital marketing with product marketing management. So as I said, I was listening onto Aman's presentation, and he did cover a lot of very good points. A lot of times people ask me, what is digital marketing? Is it a subset of marketing? And what is product marketing? Is it different from, how is it different from product management? And how is product marketing management different from digital marketing? Where does mobile marketing come into play? What is integrated marketing? To be honest, these are all new terms. A lot of them are related, and how they are related and why they are related. That's what we're going to discuss in today's presentation. So here's a quick agenda of what we're going to talk about today. So a quick background about myself. I think the presenter already gave a quick introduction. I'm going to touch upon few other points only to help you guys as to where some of my thoughts are coming from. Next, we're going to talk about the grammar of marketing, then the starting point. A lot of times people ask me, where do we start? What's the starting point for marketing? And then what's the relationship between brand, products, portfolio? Are they related at all? And, consumer decision journey. I think somebody asked this question in the previous session, what's the starting point? Who should I target? And, how should I acquire them? And the next thing is, of course, digital marketing. That's the overall theme for the conference. And what are some of the various strategies that we should consider? So a quick background about myself. As he said, I am currently working as a technology product owner for the B2B digital platform in Canon. I was a product manager in IBM. I used to work for this giant Indian IT consulting firm called Tata Consultancy Services with Citigroup as my client. You see that Electify in the middle. That's actually the tech. That's actually the tech startup that me and my few of my co-founders had started. In 2015 we sold it off in the same year too, which was mostly in the political space. I graduated from Carnegie Mellon, doing my second master's in integrated marketing at NYU. And then actually at Carnegie Mellon, I had one of my very good friends from Jamaica. I used to work at Digicel, very relevant to mobile marketing presentation, which Aman talked about in the previous one. I did my bachelor's in India from West Bengal University of Technology, and I studied at Don Bosco, an Italian missionary school back in India. Those are some of my certifications: Pragmatic Marketing, Scrum Master, Certified Product Owner. ITIL is mostly for service management. And you see soccer and Messi and Ronaldo. I call myself one of those rare species, probably who's both a Ronaldo and a Messi fan. Mostly you don't find, people who are fans of both of them, to be honest. Moving on to my next slide, which is the grammar of marketing, where we're going to talk about the 4 basic things. What are you marketing? To whom are you marketing? Why are you marketing at all? To be honest, though it might sound very basic, but a lot of times people forget as to why they are marketing. And, of course, the next big question is, how you're marketing. So coming back to the first question, what are you marketing? So A lot of times people ask, like, I'm a services based company, should I market at all? The answer is yes. If you are a product based company, if you are a services based company, sometimes even processes too. What do you think, like consulting firms like McKinsey and Deloitte, what do they sell? To be honest, all that they sell is like their processes as to how they go through the problem solving process and go through some of the cases that they work upon. Next is ideas. Yes, ideas are marketable as well. A classical example is communism, capitalism, socialism. These are nothing but ideas which have got globally marketed over the last few years, if not for the last century, to be honest. Uh, of course, in today's world, no offense meant, however shy you are, you have to, I cannot stress enough on this, have to market yourself. And of course, this, we know, everybody knows the political parties, they are marketing themselves too. Countries market themselves too. For example, all the tourism messaging that you see is a classical example of countries marketing themselves. To whom are you marketing? This is a big thing. Like, a lot of times people ask me, like, should I market to just one particular customer segment, to more than one customer segment? The answer is yes. Like, you can have multiple personas, but of course it depends on a lot of different things, which we're going to touch upon in the next few slides. Buyers, what we forget is sometimes the consumers and the buyers could be different, and we also going to talk about this in the next few slides. Don't forget to market it to consumers, of course, and the influencers. We a lot of times forget to market to influencers. And the next question is, why are we marketing? Like, what's the difference between sales and marketing, which we're going to talk about in the next few slides too. And a big thing is, yeah, I get this question a lot. If we increase distribution, do you think we are increasing marketing efforts? The answer is yes. Yes, because you are increasing your touch points. That's why you're increasing your marketing efforts. But to be honest, distribution is typically a part of a different functional area, which is operations, which is different from marketing. But in today's technology world, and especially what Aman talked about and what we are talking about in the digital conference altogether, is with digital and big data and machine learning and technology playing a huge role in marketing, the gap is narrowing a lot. All of these functional areas like operations, marketing, sales, they are kind of intermingling a lot nowadays. And how are you marketing is, of course, the media that we are using, traditional media, social media, which we have heard quite a lot in the conference, and I'm sure going to hear a lot too. Moving forward would be my next slide, which is the starting point. So I would request all you, all the audience, everybody, I'm sure like many of you might already know this, but make a note of it if you don't know this, but this is the Bible for a lot of people. And I'm going to talk about, like in the next slide, who are the people who should follow this, and that's called the business model canvas. What's typically a business model canvas? If you ask and think about any company, starting from Amazon to Google to Facebook to any non-tech company, this is basically like a one single sheet of paper which kind of outlines the 9 major building blocks for your company, for your product, or whatever you are trying to build or market, or reach out to your customers. Everything that you have on the left hand side, like partners and costs and activities and resources, to be honest, they are more on the logical side. Everything that you have on the right, like customer segments, value proposition, those are something more where you can be more creative. So the starting point is actually, by the way, this is the business model canvas is actually, there's a great book on this by Alex Osterwalder. There's an e-version of that available in Amazon and other places, in Kindle too. I would strongly recommend and suggest, if you get a chance, go through it. So we start with customer segments. I'll give you a classical example of Facebook. When Facebook first started, their customer segments were only Harvard students, not only students, but Harvard students. and their value proposition was so that they can, connect with each other, maybe share news, or chat with each other. That was kind of the value proposition. But over a period of time, where Facebook kind of grown into a larger company, the value proposition and the customer segments in general changed. So over a period of time, when Facebook became bigger, it's not only caters to students but a larger audience. What I would say is, for each customer segment, there is one value proposition. So if there is a different customer segment, there must be a different value proposition. And it is you, the marketeers, the marketing managers, the product managers, whoever is on the field, it is their job to find what's a unique value proposition that you are trying to connect with your customer base. So, and revenue streams is another very creative part. Models like pay as you go, then pay as you go, and then other various like subscription models which you see in the recent past are a very classical example of creative thinking on the right hand side part of the business model canvas. Moving on to the next slide, as I talked about in my previous slide too, as to who should know this, the answer is it's not just marketeers, and marketeers is actually a broader term. If you are a business analyst in the technology world, if you are an agile project manager, if you are a product owner, product manager, portfolio manager, product marketing manager, even in sales, you have to know this, like business model canvas. That is your starting point, and you have to make sure you have a good understanding of your customer base and how it relates to the big picture. That is the most important thing that business model canvas teaches us, teaches everybody. The next one is, here's like, one of my favorite slides. So as you can see on the top right-hand corner of this slide, I'm showing candies. What I'm trying to say is, let's say you are a candy seller. So what's your market segment? Like, who are the customers that you typically would reach out to? So here's a framework that I follow for a lot of the products that I have managed so far. Is like core users, extreme users, expert users, analogous users. If you see, like, what I'm trying to do is I'm just trying to understand what's the motivation behind somebody buying candies. So a core user, like, typically who would buy candies? We all know, like, children are the, they are most fond of candies. Like, but what you really have to notice is the buyers for children, like who are the core users, is different. The buyer is the parents. Extreme users would be like, people with other kind of addictions. For example, a lot of nicotine addicts, they move to candies, which is like a kind of a lesser, like addiction with kind of a lesser adverse effect. So they move to nicotine addiction. They move from nicotine addiction to candies. So they could be another customer base. And in this case, the buyers would be self. Like, if you've been a nicotine addict before, you would typically buy candies for yourself. The other user base is your expert users. People like, folks like FDA, the regulatory bodies, the sugar testers. They kind of monitor and track as to how much of sugar content is there. So those would be your expert users, and they buy a lot of these products in bulk too, to monitor and track and make sure they're aware of what's in the market, the competitors and other regulatory things. The last thing is the analogous users. This is a big thing. A lot of people miss this. What's analogous users, as the name suggests from English language, is this is the set of user or the user base which would behave as the same way as your core users, but is different from your core users. Typical example in this case is old people who would behave like children, and they would like a lot of candies, but they are technically not children. But as goes the famous saying, old age is twice childhood. In this case, the buyers would be different. In fact, there's a role reversal. The buyer is actually now your children and the loved ones, and in some cases the organizations too. As you would see, I have highlighted buyers like orange. By the way, a quick naming convention. So the thing that you see in orange in my slides is the most important thing in my slide, to be honest. So like bias, the reason why I highlight that is a lot of times as a marketeer, we forget bias. We only focus on core, we only focus on users. So what you need to do is, of course, you need to identify your personas, your user bases, but at the same time, keep your bias in mind too. And depending on a lot of situation, we sometimes might have to market it to buyers. I'm saying, depending on situations, there is, and we're going to talk more about. There's no right or wrong answer whether you should actually market it to buyers or you should not market it to buyers. It depends on a lot of different points that we should consider, which I want to talk about in the next few slides. The next question is, whom should you market it to? So, and this is exactly what I was talking in my previous slide. The answer is it depends. It depends on a lot of different factors, to be honest. There is no right or wrong answer. There's no playbook that I can give it to you right now. You have to be on the ground, you have to do the field work, and you have to figure out the answers yourself. But what I can give you are like pointers. What kind of pointers? Like, things like awareness. IDA, like IDA is a very common acronym used in the marketing world, where A stands for awareness, interest, desire, and action. So it depends on, what do you want from your customer base? Do you want to make them aware, like is your product not popular at all, or do you, so there is some kind of popularity, but there is not much interest. You want to grow the interest or the desire or the action. By the way, action can be very different depending on the situation. Action could be where you're actually asking, or you're actually making the customer to buy your product, or an action could be something where you're asking your customer to download your file or something. So it depends on the context too. Next thing is, what stage of the organization that you are. As I talked about Facebook in some of my earlier slides, so Facebook started initially targeted like Harvard students. MySpace targeted musicians. So like, when you, I think like somebody asked this question in one of the previous sessions, I heard this, like, as a startup, whom should I market it to? The answer is, as a startup, unfortunately, your resources are very limited. You are not like a large organization where you can afford to waste a lot of your dollars or a lot of your money that you have in your pocket. You are not a deep pocket organization. So in that case, you should focus on your primary customer segment with a unique value proposition. And remember, your primary customer segment should be the ones who cannot, who for whom you really, for whom you are really solving a big problem. To be honest, those are the people who should wake up every day and should long and desire, or they ideally should not be able to live without your product. There is a book called Hooked by one of my LinkedIn associates called Nir Ayal. He's a Stanford graduate. Definitely read that book, which teaches you how to build technology products which would get your consumer bases hooked to your technology product. So the next point is whether you are an inside out company or an outside in company. A typical example is Apple is an inside out company. What I mean by this, the ideas and the insights that they have is within the company, and then they are rolling it out to a larger audience. For example, like in 2007 and in 2008, in fact, before that, let me share with you guys another thing. Like, once Henry Ford was, he was trying to do some research. When he went to the customer base, he asked, like, what do you want? Most of the customer base, they told him, we want faster horses. But he came back and he interpreted, and he had a very good understanding of the market. He knew what they were looking for is actually not faster horses, but something faster. So he came up with car. So similarly, in this case, inside out, like Steve Jobs in the year 2007 and 2008 had a very good understanding of the market. He did a lot of research through various methodologies, and he knew that they wanted one single device which is going to take care of a lot of their problems. Like it could serve as your music holder, to your torch, to your to your phone book, to everything that you see right now. And that is how he invented the iPhone. So this is like an inside out. To be honest, it was not what the market was telling him, but it was he who understood the market insights pretty well, and he came out with a solution inside the company and then rolled it out outside to the customer base. Opposite example would be Amazon. That even before they became like this big, Jeff Bezos, ran it in a very lean way, uh, just to make sure whether there is at all a demand for a website where people would buy books from a website. He started out with a very basic thing, and that's how they came up with Amazon. Another example is Zappos, which is the shoe company which Amazon bought it in the recent past. So Amazon is an opposite example of an outside it company versus an inside out company. Next thing is brand vision. A lot of times people tell me like, my market segment is very less, I'm maybe just like, 3% or 4%. So I typically tell them that, think about companies like Louis Vuitton and Coach, where their market base, if you see, is probably 1% or 2% or 3% of the entire world population, or maybe like, maybe 7 or 8% of the US population in general. But they are making money in tons. How? Because they are fully connected to the customer base. So what really matters is not how big is your market segment, but how well connected you are to your customer base and how you can understand more about them. The next thing is about the business objectives. A lot of times I get surprised, and where people from great business schools, unfortunately, even they fail to understand the difference between profit and revenue. When you are increasing revenue, that does not necessarily mean you are increasing profit, and vice versa. It is very important as a marketer to understand this difference, because if you are not concerned about profit and if you're only concerned about revenue, maybe you can bring down the price, and that's going to help you reach out to a larger audience. So there are things like this that you should consider too. The next thing is about the marketing objective. Like, whether so there's a business objective and there's a marketing objective. These are like two different things. Marketing objective, classical example, as you see from this slide, is uh, let's say you want to increase your aided brand awareness. By the way, I'm sure many of you might be knowing there's a difference between aided and unaided. What's an aided? Like, aided is something when you are having a survey and the company is listed in that survey. So when you see the name of the company, you can recognize the name of the company. Unaided is even when you are taking a survey, or maybe when you are interviewing somebody on the road, even without giving them options, they already know your brands. For example, the Digicel, that's a name that's known all over in Jamaica. So this is something where unaided, like like you want to make your brand so much popular, you want to increase your awareness of the brand so much so that without even giving them any choice, unaided, that's going to increase the brand awareness for your product or your company. um, Next thing is the brand ladder. So the brand ladder is, it typically has like 5 levels, like features, benefits, rewards, and persona. Like features would be like, typically feature would be this laptop has, fantastic keyboards. It has like webcam and everything. So this would be like the features. Benefits would be, through the webcam, though I am sitting in New York, but I am able to connect through a larger audience. So that is a functional benefit where you can share your screen. That's a functional benefit. But there is something more than functional benefit, that is emotional benefit. The fact that we can talk and interact and have a very healthy interactive session is the emotional benefit. That what brand should be striving for. What's the emotional benefit and the connection beyond the functional one. And next thing is the brand persona. What does your brand signify? If you are a Mercedes brand, like what does your brand stand for? If you are a IBM, what does your brand stand for? If you are McKinsey, what does your brand stand for? And what's the brand idea? What's like the higher purpose of the brand? what's like the brand, what's the problem that they are trying to solve. For example, like in case of like Louis Vuitton or Coach, this is just an example. The brand idea would be to, like, make fashion accessories or connect fashion accessories. Sorry, like, make fashion accessories for the rich urban female population in and around the globe. That's probably the brand essence for Louis Vuitton. That's just an example, by the way. So the next one is marketing pyramid. This is and this is not the funnel, by the way. If you Google and search for marketing funnel, you would see a lot of different things. But this is actually marketing pyramid. This is what I generally refer to as marketing pyramid, which is nothing but the various steps as to how you should reach your customer base. So okay, this is the business model canvas. Okay, these are the various customer like the personas. But like, how would you reach out? What's like the process? The process is, okay, now that you know your brand ladder, and in the ladder, your brand vision too, what's your positioning? Like, there would definitely be competitors. Like, Facebook wasn't the first social networking site. Even like Chrome wasn't the first browser. There would be competition, but what is different in your product versus the ones that are already available in the market? What is the differentiating factor? So that's how you position yourself in the market. The next thing is segmentation. It depends, like if you are a small company and if you're a large company. If you're a small company, I would say start with just one customer segments. If you are a large company and you have the kind of resources, maybe you can you can target to one or two more segments, like 2 to 3 segments, and channelize your resources accordingly. Once you identify your segments, don't think they would come to you automatically. You have to do a very channelized and a very well thought campaigning. There are things like campaign management, as many of you would be knowing. There are processes and methodologies. They use media planner, and there are different methodologies. But make sure that there is a very well thought campaigning process to reach out to your customer base. And the fifth thing, which is very important in today's world, I'm sure many of you know this, is retargeting. Don't just think like, once you campaign to them for once, they're going to all come back to you. You have to follow up. You have to retarget using new technological methods too. But make sure, if you really want them to acquire in your customer base for your product and your services, make sure you do the due diligence and the follow up and the retargeting to get them in your customer base. Next thing is the relationship between brands, products, and portfolio management. Like a lot of times people ask me, like, are brands and products the same? How is it related to portfolio? So a typical example is Hilton. Like Hilton, under Hilton, they have like a large bunch of hotel chains in general. So here's like this slide that you have. So to answer your question, yes, brands can be products, products can be brands, but it depends again on a lot of different situations. And I'll give you a quick example. So Hilton is basically a brand. Under Hilton, it has several other brands, which are like the different hotels that you see. And under them, the products could be like, like the hotel suite is like, one product. Like the conference room could be like another product. Like these are the various products that they offer under the brands. Portfolio is like, when you have a larger number of brands or products within your portfolio. So a typical example is IBM WebSphere. That's like a huge portfolio which had a bunch of products under them, from data power to message broker to all the middleware products that they had under the WebSphere portfolio. Here's a relationship between product and brands. So if you have an existing product and an existing brand name, that's typically like a line extension. If you have a new product under an existing brand name, that would be a brand extension. And if you have if you have new products under new brand name, That would be like a multi-brand where you are kind of, which would be very similar to what Hilton is doing. Like, there is a brand and you are increasing the number of brands within a brand. So that would be a multi-brands. And a lot of times they have something called brand architecture within the organization. And then, of course, if you are rolling new product within a new brand, that would be a new brand. It could be a new product. Now, it depends. If the product is something really that touches well with the customer base, you can convert that product into a brand. Again, it depends on a lot of different factors. What stage of the company you are in, what's your vision of the product? Why are you rolling out the new product? Is it to cannibalize other products for existing competitors, or a lot of different factors that you have to consider? Uh, Next thing is the various marketing platforms, the traditional versus the word of mouth, the radio, digital, which Aman talked about a lot. The speaker before that too talked about a lot, and I'm sure you're going to hear a lot about this digital marketing platforms in general. There's a lot of good information available on the internet. Just Google it out. For a smart audience like you, I think this is the most easy part for you guys. But what is really important is the next slide, which is which platform should you go for? Is there a formula? Is there a process? Is there a method where I can find the right marketing, where I should find the right channels? I think this was one of the questions in the previous session too. And by the way, they use a term in the industry that is pretty common in the marketing world. It is called marketing mix. So here's the process that I normally follow. What I do is I try to figure out what's the company objective. If you are a non-profit company, whether you are a non-profit company or you are for profits out here, or what's overall your company objective? What's the problem that you want to solve? What's the vision of the company that you have? And how is it tied to brand architecture? Like, in this case, like Hilton, the company objective is to solve the hospitality problem within hospitality problem globally. The brand architecture is Hilton is the brand, but they would have like so many other brands under Hilton. The portfolio management, like, okay, now that we have like, around 10 to 12, 15 brands, do we get these brands clubbed to a portfolio together where with similar interests, like can we club them to a portfolio like, IBM WebSphere, they were all middleware products. So, and they all dealt kind of with the WebSphere technology. So they kind of came up with a portfolio like WebSphere portfolio. So portfolio management. What's the business objective? Why are you even having this portfolio? Like, is it like an auxiliary portfolio to increase your customer base for another portfolio? Or like, what's your main business objective? Or is it just to increase revenue or to tap into a new customer base? So depending on the business objective, the next question you have to figure out is the marketing objective. Like, as I told you in my previous slides, business objectives and marketing objectives are different. Make sure that you understand that well. Like, okay, now that this is my business objective to increase profits or to increase revenue, what's my marketing objective? How can I do that? Can I do that by increasing awareness? Can I do that by increasing interest? Or am I too bad in converting customers? So in that case, should I increase my action points? So that would be your marketing objective. Of course, you have to put in percentages, like, you have to put in like, I want to increase marketing of brand awareness by 10% or something. You have to throw in percentages and numbers like that. It has to be very defined. Any objective, it has to be very defined. Process is the consumer decision journey map. Like, after figuring out all this, this is how you are going to get the biggest and the greatest insight is, okay, now that I know all this, what is my consumer's journey? When do they wake up? And then, what are some of the various platforms? So I wake up and I am using my iPhone in Safari, that's the browser, to check, okay, whether I'm going to buy a car, which car should I buy, Honda or Mercedes or Acura or what brand? So that kind of decision is taking place, like, via that, the search engine, which is Safari in this case. Then, what do I do? So then I go into Facebook, then I like the Facebook page for like Mercedes, and then I try to figure out what's the comment. So basically, as you have to figure out, who are your consumer bases and what do they do to eventually land to a decision point, like the consumer decision journey map. I'm going to give you an example in the next slide. The next thing is integrated marketing. Once you figure out everything through the process, like the messaging has to be same across a lot of platforms. You cannot, because as Aman mentioned in the previous session, and a lot of other speakers would mention too, there are too many platforms right now, like social media, the search engines, the mobile, the apps, the native apps. So like if your logo is different in all these different platforms, if your messaging is different, then there is a problem. Yes, your messaging might be different when you are targeting to a different customer base where the value proposition is different. This goes back to the first slide which I talked about in the business model canvas. So each customer segment would have a different value proposition. So that's the only time your messaging should be different. Otherwise, your messaging should, if you are targeting the same consumer, let's say if I am a candy seller and if I am targeting core users, which is children, even if I use Facebook or Instagram or whatever, my messaging should be the same as that particular candy seller. Here's a typical example of the consumer decision journey map. Like, you see like the aware is happening through search engine, like, Google's, and then eventually their main objective is to become an advocate. This is a big thing, by the way. There's a book called Loyalty Effect. Write it down. Definitely when you get a chance, read that book. It's basically as a marketer, what really depends, and I'm going to talk about in my last slide, is not when you acquire customers. What really matters is when you are converting your customers into a loyal customer base. What it means is, a loyal customer is somebody who typically, even when you are not marketing it to them, they are talking, all the good and great things about your product and services. So that's your loyal customer base. And how is it helping you? So without even spending your marketing dollars, which is typically called the cost of acquisition, you are getting these customers to not only stay within and buy your products, but also they are actually your advocates, like free of cost. They are talking all the good and great things about your product, which is reaching to a larger audience. The next slide is, what is digital marketing? There are a lot of definitions about digital marketing, but the thing that really, people would say, okay, there's something, it's a combination of website marketing plus affiliate marketing plus email marketing, so on and so forth, which is fine. There is nothing wrong with that definition. But the thing that really defines and, differentiates with digital marketing from others is digital marketing is measured. If something that is not measured, that is not digital marketing. And there could be a lot of different things that you could measure. You could measure the impressions, the tweets, the views, the video openings, shares, likes. As a list is endless. What really happens is with each of this, like the digital marketing, marketing like measuring points, there's a lot of data. But what you actually do with that data is really a big thing. And this is where big data and machine learning and all the other things that Aman and previous speakers were talking about, would really be of immense value. So let's say you have a good idea about your customer base, let's say children, let's say somebody like X as a children, and then you are getting a good amount of information from their Facebook feed. You're also getting a good amount of information from their Instagram feed. You're getting a good amount of information from their Twitter feeds. Now, do you do anything with all these feeds coming together? Is there any insights that you can draw from them? A typical example is Amazon's related products. Like, Amazon is a classical example of a very customer-centric company. When you log into Amazon versus me logging into Amazon versus the person sitting next to you logging into Amazon, each would see a different screen. Why they would see a different screen? It is because that particular screen is catered specifically to their needs, depending on their past buying experience and their behavior, and depending on what they are liking or disliking or talking about in the recent past. Those are some of the auxiliary products and the related products that they are suggesting. Another big thing is, which I talked about in my first slide too, is the line between sales and marketing is becoming very thin. Uh, the buying decision is happening way too early in the process. Don't think like, so the consumer is very informed. So make sure that, you touch upon, you do a good exercise on the consumer decision journey map. You understand what's the first time they're thinking about their product, what's the first time they're actually thinking of buying your product, what's the first time they're thinking of using your product, and what are the various channels, and once they use, how can you get them to buy more products that you have within your company. So that's why, the line between sales and marketing is becoming very thin. The decision is being made pretty early by the consumer in the process. And that's why, you have very tools like Salesforce, which is basically a great tool which kind of mixes marketing and sales processes. So next thing is, like, those are some of the other things that you should keep in mind. Product marketing fit. Product marketing fit is nothing but the mapping of value proposition to your customer segment, or rather, I should say the opposite way. The mapping of customer segments and their corresponding value proposition is called a product marketing fit. It is a marketing lingo. It is a marketing language which is used pretty extensively in today's world. Next, there is growth hacking. Growth hacking is where you know that you are somehow stuck, and you are kind of using, either you're taking the help of either technology or even like small schemes like referral schemes when a startup launches. If they're, let's say, like Zoom is a great product for sending money to different countries, and if you do a referral you get like $25. So that's actually a classical example of a growth hacking concept. What are the various ways, a small hack through which you can increase the reachability or the desire or whatever you want from your marketing objective. Another big concept is newsjacking. A classical example is when Steve Jobs died, and I don't want to get into the details whether it was ethical or unethical, but a lot of the websites, they kind of use their name. Why? Because a lot of people were researching on Steve Jobs on the internet. If your website, did it smartly through the search engine optimization techniques, they use Steve Jobs in their names, and a lot of websites got a better ranking for that particular day, and it helped them to reach out to a broader and a larger audience. Next thing is the marketing myopia. This is a big thing. I think this also ties back to the questions that was asked in the previous session. Let's say if you are a car company, if you are Ford, you as a company owner or whoever is making that decision, you have to make that decision whether you are only in the car industry, or you are in the automobile industry, or you are in the transportation industry. Because if you are in the transportation industry, then your competitors are not only the cars but also railways, and for that matter even like the aeroplane companies too. So my point is, you have to identify what's your brand vision, and how much of a larger audience or how much of the marketing size or the audience size that you can reach out to are you targeting out here. By the way, another thing is this can change over a period of time. As I said, Facebook started just with Harvard students. Eventually, they rolled it out to students, and they went beyond students, and now probably the entire world is using Facebook. So definitely, it can change over a period of time. A few more things to keep in mind is marketing. A lot of people think, it's just acquiring new customers. No, it is maintaining old customers too. That's why I talked about Salesforce, and then I talked about concepts like loyalty and advocacy. So it is maintaining old customers and acquiring new customers. You have to focus on both. I would say if you can get your old customers into loyal customers, that's a big battle won, to be honest. Like that's where you are saving a lot of your marketing dollars, and you are doing good as a product. In fact, in the survey, I'm sure many of you would have seen, they ask you a question, how likely you are that you would recommend this product to somebody else. That is basically, they use this score, they call this question as the net promoter score, which is basically nothing but they are trying to measure the loyalty effect of your customer base. So that is where you can make a lot of profit. Don't forget it to market it to influencers, and as a marketer, there is a lot of scope for creativity. There is a lot of scope for out of the box ideas, like, from in-store promotions to pop-up stores. Try to be a thought leader in your space. The list is endless, but don't rule out creativity. So marketing, what I really like about marketing, it's a mixture of creativity plus numbers plus understanding your consumers, plus there is big data and technology for a lot of things. But there is a lot of scope for creativity, so don't undermine that part too. Here's a classical example of an age. This now the next few slides I'm going to talk about strategy. I think somebody asked the question like, what are the what's a good strategy to market my product? So the answer is, as I talked about existing products, existing market, new markets. If you are trying to work on your existing product for an existing market, you have to do work on your marketing penetration. So tools like CRM, like Salesforce, where as I told you, where to increase the loyalty. Next is, if you are trying to roll out new products to an existing market, it would be product development. New existing products to a new market would be your market development, and diversification would be new products to new markets, which is very similar to what we talked about in the brand and product slide, if you guys could remember. The next thing is, so the last thing that I talked about, the last slide what I talked about is the age-old strategy. Next thing is the broader strategy. When you are not just talking about existing products and existing customers, we are talking about existing customers, new options, new products, new technology, competitors customers, new customer, new segments. So this is like a broader strategy. And if somebody would ask me what is the right strategy, again, I would say, unfortunately, I don't have the answer. With your product, with your company, or whatever you are trying to market, would have to gather more insights, and you would know what's the right strategy for you at that point of time. As I told you, like, it can change over a period of time, but what is that you want to achieve for the next 1 month, for the next 2 months, for the next 6 months, and why is that you want to achieve that's how you want to pick up the different that's how you're going to pick up the box in this slide, like what's the right strategy for you. Next, another thing is, before I conclude, is strategy can be at different levels. When people talk about strategy, sometimes, all the business, the MBAs, they think about only the numbers and the business strategy. And when the marketing people, the advertisers, the brand people, they talk about only the creative part. The truth is, strategy, when you are coming up with a strategy, that has to be executed well. As I told you, Facebook, Google, they were not the first products in their space. Facebook wasn't the first social networking site. Google wasn't the first browser or the search engine. But what they did is they really executed it well. So, when you are thinking about strategy, you have to think the strategy and connect it with the brand. What's your content strategy? What's your digital strategy? What's your product strategy? What's your positioning strategy? So those are some of the things that you also have to keep in mind. Another big thing about strategy is strategy does not come free. And accordingly, so you have to allocate resources. So, that's the biggest challenge if you are a manager, especially if you're a product marketing manager or a marketing manager. Which strategy will you pick up? Even if you pick up the strategy, do you have the resources? And, how are you going to allocate your resources? So that's another question to keep in mind. So what's the right strategy? As I talked about, it totally depends on your objective, and you have to find that answer for yourself. Another question, and this I think I touched a bit in my previous slides. if you are a non-profit organization and you're trying to make profit, is it a good strategy? Is it the right strategy? I would say it depends, but there is no harm or there is nothing wrong in making profit being a non-profit organization. Why? But of course, as long as you stay with your theory of change. Why? Because non-profits, remember, it runs from some funds. Either somebody is donating that money or you are getting that money from somebody. So if you are making profit and eventually using that profit for the greater cause of running the non-profit, personally, there is nothing wrong in that, to be honest. And again, what's the right strategy on a greater scheme? You have to figure it out yourself. Um, as I talked about in my previous slides, just to is it your objective just to acquire new customers? No, marketing is maintaining old customers plus acquiring new customers. But more than acquiring new customers, what really matters is the retention and usage. If you can retain your customers over a long period of time, see Facebook, whoever joins Facebook stays there for quite a number of time. What's the customer lifetime value? And if you can make the people use that product, if I log into a platform and never use it, then there's no point. The more I use it, how many times in a day do I log into Facebook? That's where you can really, diversify your products, increase your profits, and make a lot of positive leap from there. Having said that, thank you once more for listening to me. I don't know whether I went a bit over time, but thanks everybody.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mohar Chakrabarty.
Thank you.
Debbie, hi.
Hi, Raj. I was just thanking Mr. Mohar for that presentation and telling our auditorium that we now are opening the floor for questions. So, yes, we have one there in the middle already. Do we have any other? All right, so let's get that one there. Hopefully, we'll have others following. Please introduce yourself as well. Thank you.
Hi,
Good afternoon.
good afternoon. I'm Georgia Clark from Juicy Patties. There are two things that I missed, but I really need to find out. You had recommended two books. You had said that one was by Alex. I didn't get the title, I didn't get the last name. And you gave a second book talking about loyalty. Would I be able to get information on those two books that you had mentioned?
Yeah, sure. Can you hear me? Hello? Hello? So actually,
Yes, we can hear you,
three
Mr. Mohar.
books.
Go ahead.
So number one is Loyalty Effect. I somehow forgot the author name, but it's a very famous book. If you search in Amazon, you should get it. The next book is Business Model Canvas. The author is Alex Osterwalder. He's a very famous professor in a business school in Europe. That's his second book. And the third book is Hooked. The author is Nir, N as in Nokia, I as in India, R as in Russia, Nir Eyal, like E as in England, Y as in Yankees, A as in Apple, L as in London. He's a Stanford graduate. He's on my LinkedIn. That's another big book where he teaches and he talks about the methods to build a technology product which would get you hooked onto the system. By the way, feel free to add me on LinkedIn or Twitter or any other place. I would be more than happy to connect you guys going forward. And anything that I can help, I would love to.
All right, thank you so much for that question. Do we have another, please? Any other questions for Mr. Mohar? All right, we don't seem to have any at this time. Raj, do you have any on your side?
Yes, this question is from Jabalile. If someone is launching a new product to market, what are the best channels for rapid traction?
Yeah, that's a very good question. This goes back to the slide where I talked about, remember the process with what's the marketing objective, the business objective, and the consumer journey map. So to be honest, I don't know what's your product, what's your market, but I can give you a classical example of the startup that I had formed. So my startup was Electrify. It was basically to make the unified voice of the customer get heard to their local representatives. So, like for example, if you are a senator or a congressman sitting so high up in the chain, to be honest, they don't make much of a difference in your daily life. It's the local people, like you and me. When you are walking outside the street, when you see a pothole, you don't even know whether that pothole is just bothering you or bothering some other people. And even if it does bother you, what can you do? So to find this local kind of people, to get a lot of traction, what we did is we actually went to a lot of this political conventions. No offense, man, this is not, I am not politically connected to anybody, but like we went to the Democratic Party conventions, we went to the Republic Party conventions, and we started talking about our products. We started like, why don't you download our products, start using it, using as a trial form, give us our feedback. So I would say, why did I do this? Because I felt like, through my consumer decision journey map that we came up with, we felt that's where they are making a lot of decisions, where, or they would make a lot of decisions had they been given a choice to use this kind of a product. So to answer, I would say the traction is hustling, especially if you are new in the market, hustling and growth hacking. Like, hustle means like, go to where the action is actually happening. Be on the field. There is a famous acronym called NIHITO. Nothing happens in the building. If you are a marketeer and if you are sitting back behind your computer doing all the work in social media, which is great, you would get a lot of feedback, but you have to be in the market talking to your audience, connect with them, and that is where you can acquire a lot of your initial customer base.
Right. Thank you very much, Mr. Chakrabarty.
Thank you. Thank you all. Have a great day. Bye-bye. Thank you.